Welcome, Sallie. We are so excited to have you here at our Diversity Reboot Summit, where we're going to be talking about finance and inclusion in finance. And so we're so grateful to be able to have you here to hear more about your experience with Ellevest and just your experience in general. So I'd love to start off because oftentimes when we're starting companies, it starts off with a personal story and a mission. So could you tell us when you first became interested and involved in the world of finance and what inspired you to found Ellevest?
Yeah, so I went to Wall Street right out of college. Not that I had any kind of my family had no Wall Street background. In fact, in college, I think I took one math class, but it was, Wall Street at that point was sort of the Silicon Valley of today. And so for young people, if you could, you might want to. And ended up really hating parts of it, the sort of macho, stay up all night and run for airplanes and, sharp elbows, but loving other jobs that I had, which were very analytical, problem solving, engaging with really great and smart people. I was fortunate enough to reach some senior roles on Wall Street. I ran research at Sanford Bernstein. When there was a Smith Barney, I ran the old Smith Barney. I was chief financial officer of Citi, and I ran Merrill. So through hard work and privilege and luck and, a magical concoction of a bunch of stuff, I was able to have some senior roles on Wall Street. I also was fired twice from senior roles. And I think the fact that I was so different from others certainly drove that I would be the only woman at the table, not just some of the time, but quite often. And so it was when I had, been my sort of slightly controversial, different thinking self. And I was in a career break that was foisted upon me. And, I began to, I had some time to think and to reflect and to step back and, sort of some things that were incredibly obvious to me, when I was there became a little murkier, meaning that, women don't invest as much as men do, said everyone on Wall Street and in the investing industry, because they're so risk averse, because they're not as good with math, because they're not good at investing, because they don't like investing, because they need more financial education and all that. Yeah, that sounds right, except none of it's right. Women are as good or better at math. Women, when they invest, outperform men. Women are not risk averse. They're risk aware. They want to understand the risk, but they're happy to take it when they understand it. And do they need more financial education? Sure, but so do men. And so I began to think, well, maybe, it's not women's fault. Maybe it's that the industry, 99% of investment firms are owned by white men, and 98% of mutual fund dollars are managed by men. Maybe they built a business for themselves. And oh my gosh, maybe that meant that investing was unapproachable for women, that in all kinds of ways. One way, if you go to an investing firm and you see a wall of people who look nothing like you, there's not a connection. Another way, investing minimums, sexist and racist, right? Because who has the money to invest? White men. And so I said, well, what if we build something around women, and what if we make it incredibly accessible? And we started with investing. And by the way, investing has been a source of generational wealth that we have been shut out of. And so what if we start with investing, but Ellevest has expanded to be more of almost what I like to think of as a financial wellness company, where we help you also with coaching, with intentional spending, with saving, but investing too. And so the idea was, in a day when we're all talking about the gender pay gap, there's a gender wealth gap driven in part by the inaccessibility of these sources of generational wealth.
Absolutely, no, and that's huge. And I think something that I really just want to lean in on and acknowledge is, number one, thank you for being transparent about the fact that in your career journey, it hasn't always been easy, but some of those hardships and the things that you loved is really what sparked the need for change. And the other thing that I really just want to talk about is when we're talking about not just what we believe to be true, but what society kind of ingrains in us to be true, also creates a lot of different mindset beliefs, right? So it's not just saying, okay, well, do I have access to this, but do I believe that I'm worthy of having access to this? can I kind of unlearn what I've been taught by society to be able to say, okay, well, other people are telling me that I might not necessarily be good at math, but actually, once I learn from other individuals to do it, then I start having more confidence. And so or at least in your recent Marie Claire interview, you mentioned that money is women's number one biggest source of stress, as well as the number one driver of confidence. And so I loved when you were positioning that, because you were really being able to say the same thing can either be a huge hurdle for a lot of women or the thing that propels them forward. And so something I'd love to hear from you is, what are some of those mindset shifts that you've seen over time with the women who are a part of Ellevest? And what would you recommend to women who are kind of going through that process of thinking, I can't have financial freedom, to working towards that
Yeah.
with what
And
you
look,
provide?
and maybe financial freedom is not the right thing to shoot for everybody, right? Financial freedom, oh, I never have to work again. Financial confidence, where, what, I've got enough money in the bank, or I have enough investments, or I feel good enough about money that I can leave this job that is just horrible, leave this relationship that is just horrible,
Mm.
buy a car, buy a house, buy a whatever, start a business that, getting to the point where you are no longer making decisions from a lack of money,
Yep.
but from an abundant, but from having confidence in money and feeling stability around money. And I always think, the point you just made, money is both. Money is our number one source of stress, but when we take action on it, it's the number one driver of our confidence in the future. And for anyone who has kids in kindergarten, take that frown and turn it upside down. And what's interesting is it's the taking of action. And I remember this over the holiday. For whatever reason, I was just like, I hadn't looked at my budget in a while. And of course, I'm not making, a big salary at Ellevest. And so I was starting to just fret around how much is coming in and how much is going out and what to do. And it bothered me for days. And then I finally sat down on my computer and just laid it all out. And to be quite frank, it wasn't any better than I thought, but I felt such a sense of relief because I knew what it was. And then the uncertainty was gone. And so it surprises some people that the number one source of confidence isn't whether you're leaning in or how much is in the bank or, how much your boss likes you or how good your relationship is with your partner. It's, are you taking some kind of action? And so, today for men, if you talk to them about money and you say, what's the synonym? They say power, strength, independence. And women say loneliness, isolation, or uncertainty. And to your point, Sienna, it's because we learned that as children, in my household, maybe different in other households, let's not talk about money.
Yep.
And dad was in charge of the investing and buying the car and the big decisions. And mom was the coupon clipper and the budgeter. Yep. And so you take that through life. Well, that's our gender roles, just as I was told as a child, no, you're not supposed to like puppies, you like kittens. And I'm like, oh, okay. Literally that happened to me, but okay, I'm not the money one. And then stepping into that role. And, I see something for young women still today, and I'd say particularly for young white women, where they still sort of think it's cute to be bad with money. I'm not good with money. No, not me. And these are women who, are so accomplished in other ways. And it used to be that way for sports. Oh, I can't run. The Williams sisters, Venus actually an investor in Ellevest, helped to change that. Women's soccer helped to change that. Billie Jean King helped to change that. And we got to get there on money too for women.
Yeah. I love that. And something that you had just shared of the simple fact of when you say taking action, sometimes a lot of people think taking action has to be a huge step, right? Like, oh, well, now I need to save X amount to start investing, or I need to. And sometimes it's as simple as like sitting down and actually just looking at the numbers. And I was laughing when you were sharing that because I had a recent experience this past week of like being stressed, then actually just sitting down and saying, hold on. When I actually have knowledge and I'm taking the right step to look at what it is, then it kind of can go from that stress to confidence. And so something that I love about what you all do is that the focus is really also being able to have access to coaches and mentors and individuals who can teach. And so I think when it comes to women empowering women in the world of finance. It's something that's so important, both that community and coaching aspect. And so I'd love for you to just share more with our readers, with our listeners, with our listeners, with our readers, with anyone who's watching this. But just really share a little bit more about what you all do and why that importance of community is there.
Oh, well, so first of all, so there are two, let's separate them for a second, community and coaching. So we have built a community around money, and it's on Instagram. If you follow us, it's Instagram lives that we do. It's LinkedIn lives that we do. It's workshops we do if you become an Ellevest member. But we have this community. When we started, I didn't know that was going to be important. But and it sort of was something that happened pretty organically. Hey, let's post some stuff on Instagram. Let's write some stuff. And we should have a content strategy. But again, what we discovered is that emotion for her of money, of loneliness. On top of that, Sienna, the fact that it's taboo to talk, in some groups, to talk about money with each other. And so, the research tells you that women will talk about sex with each other, right? Talk about their own death, but prefer not to talk about money. That's not every woman, every group, everywhere. But it is certainly the case, for a broad swath of women. And so how do you know how much to ask for if you're not talking about it? How do you know where to go invest if you're not? How do you realize investing isn't as risky as everybody as you thought it has been if you're not talking about it? So the community has been important, and we're going to build on that. The coaching was, where we have at Ellevest some one-on-one coaching, money coaching, budget coaching, career coaching. Yeah. Because we've heard from women, I want to make more money too. We're like, fine, we can help you with that.
I love it.
And just as we have democratized investing, no investing minimum, truly reasonable, the most reasonable fees, right? Whoa, let's try to democratize coaching. Because I tell you, if I were to say today, Sienna, you need an executive coach, where the heck would you get one?
Yeah.
And by the way, when I was at Citi Group and I was CFO, they gave me an executive coach. It's a 68-year-old white man. I mean, I was a 39-year-old, 40-year-old woman, the only woman at the company. I'm like, there is nothing here. He'd be, you go in and you be aggressive. I'm like, oh my gosh, if I do that, I will be talked about for weeks, right? They will be talking about this for weeks, maybe years, if I do that sort of manly take control thing. And so what we wanted to do was to make the coaching accessible and make it representative of our community, so that we can, there's an intuitive and ingrained understanding of the issues that are being faced.
Yeah, I love that. And I also just want to acknowledge you, because I'm a huge fan of what you all do. And I love the fact of how intersectional it is, right? And I think that representation is so important in being able to say, how are we talking about money, but also doing it in a way where everyone feels like they're represented. And so having there be that intrinsic motivation of being like, well, this community is also for me. And so I'd love to talk about that for a little bit, just like around the intentionality of intersectionality when it does come to women in finance. How have you personally seen diversity evolve in the financial industry, and then also even within that community? If it has, right?
The industry. And I'm not going to take on the whole industry because, I can tell you in companies that I've worked in and been in senior roles, and it had been slow. And there was always we're pipeline, or, the BS pipeline, and we're going to hire more folks, and we're going to, and then you see that the senior levels, maybe they added one woman, maybe they added one person of color, to their senior team, but you're not seeing a lot of movement. And what the research tells us, and by the way, we all hear the same thing. Well, we hire and we can't keep them. And that's actually exactly incorrect. They hire them and then they don't promote them. And so, these underrepresented groups are sort of caught in these junior level positions. Do I think it's going to change? I don't know. I hope so. But when we're still in a circumstance when you can name the one female CEO.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And there used to be a Black CEO, but there isn't anymore. I mean, forget it, right? So I assume there's progress. Let's go. But I was like, forget it. I'm founding Ellevest. And there's research that says that the diversity of a startup is set by the time you get to about 12 people, believe it or not. because you start to go towards your networks. And so we started very intentionally to overrepresent underrepresented groups at Ellevest. And, of course, the first is we're 76% women. Our engineering team, unlike any other engineering team of any size, is majority women. We're 50% people of color. We're 20+% LGBTQIA identifying. And those numbers, of course, are shifting at all points in time, but we're working to be representative of the world around us, not the Wall Street world from 1950, 53. And then it spills over into what we do. So, for example, we have within our financial advisor private wealth offering intentional impact portfolios. They are with a gender lens. They are also with an anti-racist lens that we added. And it's been a learning process for us. We first did the gender lens, helping women advance. And then, trying to get better, trying to move forward every day, recognizing that you can't be about advancing women if you're not specifically about advancing Black women. Yeah. And so going back to the drawing board and making sure that we were divesting from the private prison ecosystems, for example, recognizing that, things like climate change, which we think of separate from gender or ethnicity, actually hurts women more, hurts people of color more. And so divesting from companies that are harming the environment, and then proactively getting money into the hands of women, oftentimes women in transition, women who've been victims of domestic abuse, for them to find housing, et cetera. So it's both investing in women and divesting from companies that are hurting women, people of color.
That's huge. And I just really want to celebrate that, because I think something that happens so often is that a lot of times when individuals, as they are starting and or growing companies, think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's like, how are we checking off the box, instead of something we were just talking about in a training yesterday around anti-oppression practices in the workplace is like, what if you thought about all of your processes, your procedures, your initiatives with the least represented individual in mind, right? So really reverse engineering that and saying, well, how are we making sure that we're intentionally being inclusive, exactly like what you just shared. I love that. And so something that I want to bring in some of the questions from the audience that we were getting in, just because we got a lot of really interesting questions. And Kay is someone who said that she's interested in starting to invest, but it feels like there are a lot of options, right? And so what are some easy, let's say, top 3 tips that you would share for beginners who are looking to get started?
So first of all, there are a lot of options. Not any that were built specifically for women like Ellevest was, by the way. And I want to be really clear that there is trading and there's investing. Bitcoin, GameStop, cryptocurrencies. My cousin Manny said that we should buy this stock. I was in a taxi. He was really clear. This is called trading. This is a losing strategy. I do not care what you heard from your cousin at the last holiday. They only talk about when they win. They don't talk about the losses. But nobody has ever retired well from trading, because trading is essentially, frankly, betting that the stock market is wrong or the crypto market is wrong, and that you know something or see something and you can trade around it frantically to pick up pennies on the street that all the guys at Goldman and all the guys at Morgan Stanley and all the guys at Citigroup and all the guys at Deutsche Bank and all the guys at UBS and all the guys at, et cetera, don't see. Never going to happen. It can happen in a few trades. Investing is much less work. Investing is putting your money in a diversified investment portfolio, stocks, bonds, maybe a little bit of real, investment in real estate, US, global, putting that money in a broad range of investments, a little bit out of every paycheck, keeping your fees low, and letting it grow. Now that sounds so unsexy because, well, Sallie, doesn't that mean I'm just going to perform in line with the markets? Yeah, and you're going to do better than literally 99.9% of these people. And that number is not a made up number. That's a real number. And so investing is one of those
Mm.
really interesting places where you can do more by doing less. And so when you come to Ellevest, and by the way, we've got a special code for you and a special page set up for you. So ellevest.com/power, or use the code power. And there's some resources on that page for you to help you with all of that, and a little present for you as well, of some free months of membership. But when you come to an Ellevest, we construct that portfolio for you. We are the only ones who, in constructing the portfolio, take into account that you're a woman, or you're a non-binary individual, or you're a man. Why does that matter? Because women earn less, sadly, our salaries peak sooner, and we die later than men. Those three things mean if you're investing on average, which is what the whole street does, you risk running out of money. And Ellevest is the one that sort of built this. So look, I use an investment. I use obviously Ellevest. I have an investment provider. I don't put together the portfolio myself. I don't trade stocks. This is the way to go. And I would just start with a little bit out of every paycheck that goes into the investment account. It's got to be money you don't need for 10 or 15 years, and just let it be, and we'll manage it and take care of it for you. And if history is any guide, you will be, if history is a guide, you will be surprised by what you see. P.S. If since the 1920s you invested on any given day in the stock market, left the money there for 15 years, you had a 99% chance of a positive return. And so we women tend to think investing is riskier than it historically actually has been.
I love that. And also, just for all of you who are listening, take note that Sallie just shared an amazing code for us, a landing page with extra resources. So for those of you who are looking to take the first step, definitely be able to, or definitely be sure to check that out. And Sallie, I love what you're sharing, because there are things that, again, sometimes probably feel overwhelming for a lot of people who are listening, right? Of saying, oh, well, stocks and bonds and trades, but I don't really know where to start. And so I love how, when you were talking about it, it's like it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? And that it doesn't have to be something that's hard or difficult, which is what a lot of people think when it does come to investing and doing that long term. And so I want to take a pause for a little bit, because I'm sure that we have some of the people in the audience who their ears sparked up when it came to career growth and making more in the workplace, right? And so I would love to just hear a little bit about your experience of, what would you say for women who are looking to elevate in their career, and also start making more money, learning how to negotiate, learning what they're worth, and then how to communicate that and add tax?
Yeah. Well, so again, we actually, if you come over to ellevest.com/power, we have all kinds of workshops on this, on how to negotiate, how to get to move further forward. And look, I can sit here and talk about it for a bit, right? Talk to your boss about what expectations are earlier in the year. Don't wait till you get to December and you're like, did I get a raise? Sit down early in the year. Make sure you understand what success for the company is, what the company values, and what success for you is. And that's scary to a lot of people, because, well, what if I don't hit my goals? What's scarier is hoping Santa Claus will come at the end of the year, particularly when it's been proven again and again that women make less than men do for the same job. So getting clear up front. Now that I've said that, the one thing I want to say that I don't think anybody else is going to tell you is, sometimes it's not going to happen for you. And it's not your fault that too many of us work for Todd, as we call him. And Todd is a really, just lovely, lovely, lovely white man, sometimes a woman, really goes to all the diversity cocktail parties, talks in a woke fashion, talks about how his mother is his inspiration. You're like, yeah, Todd's great, right? And then, Todd promotes Stuart, and Todd promotes Jim, and Todd promotes Chad, and Todd promotes, Jimmy. And all of a sudden, and this has happened to so many friends of mine, and it derailed their careers. It is years later before, and by the way, we're buying the books. We're buying the books. How do I get ahead? How do I negotiate? What do I do? Right? We're buying the books, and we're trying it all out. And then maybe my project wasn't quite good enough. And it can take women years to say, you know what? He's never gonna friggin' promote anybody who doesn't look like him. Never. And so there's a time at which you got to get out. And so I would just keep an eye out for that, because again, there's no book that says it's not you, it's him, book is over. But look, before you accept a job, who has been promoted, who's in the C-suite? Do you see yourself, a representation of yourself there? If you don't, it's 2021. Okay. It's not like, oh, I'm what? Diversity? What? Hello? And when the last few people Todd promoted, who were they? Right.
Yeah, and that's big. And I also think something that I really want to acknowledge is that we're seeing a lot more women entrepreneurs, right? And especially we're seeing a lot more Black women entrepreneurs. And a lot of that does come from not having a seat at the table or not feeling like you have a seat at the table. So similarly to like what you were sharing before about why you started Ellevest, is saying, I'm tired of being at this table where I feel like I'm the only person or the token, or it's constantly a battle. And instead I'm going to create my own. And so what would you recommend to women who are watching this, or anyone who's watching this and they're looking to start their own businesses, but they don't know where to start?
Yeah. With something you're passionate about, if you're fortunate. I tell so many want to be entrepreneurs, who just have this image of, I'm going to start this and I'm going to have a, great office and a brick wall and a foosball machine. And then we're going to be a unicorn. I'm going to be a billionaire. It's going to be amazing. And you say, like, you read about a few of them, but nobody else gets there. 91% of startups that go for venture funding fail, right? Yeah. So the chances, it depends on where you are, right? If you're doing, I want to open a store in my town, is one way. But if you're like, I want to go for it and do a startup, is another way. These very low odds of success. That's okay. Because if you're something you're passionate about and you want to do, and you're flexible and you're, ready to pivot and you're on top of it, you're all smart enough, you can do it, right? But it's just much easier if you're passionate for it. And then the second thing, if you're over here in the entrepreneur bucket, the good news is there are many more sources of funding today. That we've all read the depressing statistics about how little funding women get and how infinitesimal amount of funding women of color get. But I would urge you to head over to my friend Karen Kahn's I Fund Women, where she has an offering, I Fund Women of Color, which is a crowdfunding source. And we're seeing increasingly Black women starting seed funds and Series A funds that specifically are looking to invest in diverse founders. So back in the day, trying to get into Andreessen Horowitz was tough. Reaching out to these women who are now specifically looking to fund women of color, Black women, doesn't mean the odds are good, but it means the odds are better. So finding those, and I found when I was out looking to raise money for Ellevest, there's one of two ways you can go. One of which is go to Silicon Valley and try to convince what's mostly white men about my vision for Ellevest, or try to find people who believe in my vision for Ellevest and try to convince them to give me money. Right. And so happily, because of what I did, I know people with money. And so this is to me, it was easier to convince someone to give me money than to convince someone that women need their own investing platform. And, it's not dumb, it's not women's fault. Women, actually are more than half the population. So you could actually make a slightly viable business out of it, like this stuff, the stuff I had to answer over here. I'm like, really? Like, really?
I love that. And also talk about alignment. Actually, I Fund Women's, one of the co-founders, is actually speaking at this summit. So that's amazing to hear that y'all work together and that y'all know each other. I love that.
We've been through the war. You tell Karen, she and I have been through the wars together. There have literally been when we were on the phone together, there was one thing she was helping me with, and we were on the phone together one weekend, maybe 30 times, maybe 20 times. Yeah, she's a good egg.
Yeah, but again, that goes back to what you were saying around community and the importance of having other like-minded individuals going through the same processes, because again, it's a lot easier to have these conversations like what you were saying around funding, where instead of trying to convince someone why it's necessary, actually just being able to say, hey, this is what we're doing, this is what we're trying to do, are you down to help? So that's amazing.
Yeah.
And Sallie, as we are getting ready to round up, I'm sorry, I was like, we don't know this, but I live in Spain, so my brain thinks in Spanish sometimes before it does in English. So I appreciate your patience. But what I was going to say is, like, as we are rounding up, I do want to give space for you to be able to share more of where people can find you and connect with you more. But before we do that, just for everyone listening, I would love for you to give one piece of advice to anyone who's listening who wants to take a next step towards increasing their knowledge around finances and financial wellness. So one piece of advice that you wish maybe you had a couple of years ago, or that you would share with them.
Well, the industry, it is in the industry's interest, the traditional industry's interest, to make investing feel complicated and unapproachable, so that you hire them for a big chunky fee, right, to do it for you. Believe me, it's actually just not complicated. And so with Ellevest, we were trying to build something which is sophisticated. I think the most sophisticated investing algorithm out there. And using technology could bring it, we have memberships that are $1 a month, $5 a month, $9 a month. So for the most affordable type of offering, and of course, move beyond investing. So I think we just, because women, if we see terms we don't understand, and because we all like to get those good grades, I'm going to buy a book on investing, I'm going to wait and get it straight. And then, we wait our lives out and end up with tens of thousands, for some women, hundreds of thousands of dollars less than the men in our lives, because we waited till we were going to really understand it. So we tried to build Ellevest, where we hope you can trust us. We're a fiduciary. We're legally obligated to put your interest ahead of our own. We try to keep investing. We try to pare it down to its essence. It is important you do this, not just because who doesn't want more money, but also because outsourcing that money to your partner in life. If you are with a man, women live 6 to 8 years longer than he does. 80% of us die single. And so we outsource the money, then it comes back to us during what may be the worst week of our lives. And 74% of women have a negative surprise. And so investing, there's a positive to doing it, and there's really a negative to not doing it that unfortunately hits us in our 70s, our 80s, our 90s, when things are getting too late. So that's why we founded an Ellevest. We try to keep it straightforward, based on decades of research of what works and what's a waste of time. Visit us, and even if we're US only, I'm afraid, but even if you're outside the US, if you go to magazine, we have a ton of resources for you there that, we hope can help you get started in another country if that's what we need to do.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us, for sharing your knowledge, your expertise with the community, Sallie. It's been amazing to hear from you. And where can everyone find you? I know that you shared the page, but just share it one more time, just in case people weren't taking it.
So come on over to ellevest.com, and particularly come on over to ellevest.com/power, which we put up a page specifically for y'all, or download the app. And as you're sort of checking out, type in power and you'll get months free of membership. For me, that's probably the best place to find me, to sign up for our newsletter, which I write once a week. Sometimes it's about the stock market. A lot of times it's just feminist rants. I'll be Sunday, I'll be like, this is just irritating me. But we hope always thought-provoking. You can find us at Ellevest on Instagram, on LinkedIn, etc. Though ellevest.com is in the newsletter is probably the best way. But we look forward to keeping in touch, and come on, we're trying to change the world. So let's all change the world in our own way and together.
Let's do it together. I love it. Well, thank you so much again for joining us at our summit, and we cannot wait to have you back soon.
Thanks. Take care.
Bye.